Next, from Springfield, we head to the House floor to hear a debate over an amendment that would take redistricting power out of the hands of the political parties and into the hands of a non-political panel. This runs about 20 minutes.
Thank you for that question. We allow for denesting in this proposal.
And how does that compare to the citizen initiative?
I'm not sure. Oh, yeah. I think they require nesting.
That's what I thought too. Why did you go that direction? And that's one of my biggest concerns with your legislation is that, and for people that don't know that, right now you have to have 2 representatives that are included within a Senate district, which is nesting. Under your proposal, Senate districts would be drawn completely separate from representative districts. So
they don't have to be. They could be, but they don't have to be.
Well,
well, the reason why I did this, because it allows for more flexibility, so we're able to meet the criteria that we've laid out, which I think it's very important to protect minority interests.
But that also allows
Independent Maps doesn't have that. And also we can keep towns together. I think when I first ran, and you see it in Cook County. I mean, the southern parts of Cook, you can have 8 different in communities. I think it's important to keep communities together as well, and this would help do that.
Well, it could also completely do the opposite, where you may have Champaign-Urbana split up east and west, and you may have Champaign-Urbana split up north and south with 2 separate senators. So it could, in fact, allow for more gerrymandering, more confusion with the voters. Because
I don't think so. There's not going to be gerrymandered because you and I aren't going to be involved. People who look like you and I, people in this room, will not be involved. It will be people who are divorced from the political process, who don't have conflicts of interest like we do. So instead of us picking our constituents, the constituents will actually, for the first time, get to choose who their legislators are. So people in this room will no longer have any influence, which I think is by far the most important part of this.
Well, speaking on our side of the aisle, we haven't had any say for quite a while, Jack. So.
Oh, but you have in the past, and you're just as bad as we've been.
Only 25% of the time, because we've only drawn maps since 1970. And I agree with you on that concept. It's just, how many other states have denesting? Do you know that? I mean, I think it adds to the confusion for voters where...
I don't think there's any confusion. I think that's a red herring that you guys have put out over the weekend because someone on the second floor said there can be confusion. But the fact is, I think our voters are smart enough to understand, and I don't think denesting is confusing whatsoever. And I would also venture to say that most people don't know who their senators and state reps are.
Well,
so I don't think there's going to be a lot more confusion.
Speak for yourself there, Representative. A lot of grade school kids know who their representative and senator are in my district. But anyway, that's one of my concerns with it. I'll listen to the debate as we move forward.
But if they do make it both on the ballot, then the citizens would have a choice of which kind of reform they would like, and it'd be up to the judiciary to decide how it goes. I think in other states, when there's been amendments like this, they've looked at the ones that have gotten the most votes. But it would be our judiciary who would make that determination.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Representative Ammons is recognized.
You can just talk to me.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The sponsor yield.
He indicates that he will yield.
Thank you, Representative Franks.
Thank you.
I just wanted to clarify a couple things that I worked on over the past week around this issue. So we have currently 37 state legislatures are responsible for drawing their districts. How does the process you're proposing make districts better as a result of what you're considering as independent people, which I don't know who they are, but.
I'm sorry, your question was 37?
So your proposal, 37 states currently draw their districts, of course, by law, and still draw their districts by law. There have been some states that decided to put into independent commissions, and the results of those commissions have actually reduced representation of minority members of those legislatures. So how does your process that you're proposing actually avoid the obvious?
That's a good question, and what we do now is not, there are no protections for minorities. What we do now is blatant gerrymandering so we can make What we have now is an incumbent protection program, that the incumbents, whatever party's in power that gets to draw the maps, draws it in such a way that they don't worry so much about who the constituents are, but how that individual who's currently representing that area can get the most votes and keep their job for the next 10 years. That's what it's based on. What we're trying to do is to divorce the politics from this and empower the citizens to make sure that they get to choose who their representatives are, because the criteria, I think, is important. Yeah, they have to be substantially equal in population. They have to provide racial minorities and language minorities with the equal opportunity to participate in the political process and elect candidates of their choice. They also must provide racial minorities and language minorities who constitute less than a voting age majority of a district with an opportunity to substantially influence the outcome of an election. They have to be contiguous and compact, and they also have to respect, to the extent practical, geographic integrity of units of local government, as well as communities sharing a common social or economic interest. So those criteria, I think, will greatly enhance the abilities.
So let me clarify, because the criteria itself tells me that the average layperson won't make it onto this commission. The average person won't know how to draw maps in consideration of those things you've just identified. Who are these people that are going to be nonpartisan to do what, in essence, the legislature really should do?
No, I don't think the legislature should do it, because the legislature has done it, and we've done a rotten job of it.
We got 21 members, and the most in the history of African Americans in this legislature. I don't know who did it, but I think that's a high number in today's time.
My point is, what we're doing is we're picking our constituents, not the other way around. So the question is, who are going to be these commissioners? They are going to be appointed by the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice, and the Justice of the highest-ranking justice of the opposing party, and putting those folks in with one person from each judicial district. So that's who the folks are. Based on these criteria, they're the ones who are making those decisions. But understand that every map that we've ever drawn has always ended up in the Supreme Court, okay? They're always ultimately making that decision. So what we're doing now is starting there and protecting minorities.
So that's a very good point that was raised by one of the scholars at the university. And the question was, if it ends up in the Supreme Court or Illinois Supreme Court, ultimately at some point, how are they who are appointing then going to turn around and judge on the actual map anyway?
I don't think I think we avoid it this way, because they're the ones who are drawing it. Yeah.
That's a little unclear, but I get that. I think there are certainly some concerns that have been expressed to me just through the research and look at other so-called independent commissions. I would hope that the commission, as a result of this process, if this passes, that this commission also will reflect, which we don't know how it could, because we don't have very many judges actually on the Supreme Court. As a matter of fact, I don't think we have any. Do we have any minorities on the Supreme Court in Illinois?
Sure we do.
How many do we have?
Well, you have some women on the Supreme Court. You have African Americans on the Supreme Court.
African American, Latino, people of color.
Sure, you do.
How many do we have there?
I know we have Justice Freeman, who's African American, and yeah. And is there anybody else? Yeah, Justice. I'm not sure who else. We have a couple of women as well.
So I think that bears some concern, certainly in communities of color, that this issue is being talked about in relationship to helping communities of color, but it doesn't actually reflect that in the judiciary.
No, because that's the difference here. Because right now, even if the Supreme Court doesn't have as much diversity as you would prefer,
yes,
this requires
the
commission to be reflective and also of what the racial and demographic of the whole state is, and it takes into account to provide for the racial minorities and language minorities. This is by far the most protections that we've ever had, and this far exceeds the federal requirements. Far exceeds. This will become the model for the nation.
I hope you're right. Thank you, Representative Franks, for taking my questions.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the sponsor yield?
Sponsor will yield.
Jack, there's been, many community forums that have gone on about this bill. There's been a couple of them out in my district, and I attended one. And it's funny, you know, we don't make public policy on the basis of anecdotes or one meeting. But one of the things I thought was interesting, one that I went to, is there was a divide on the basis of age.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing
There was a
you.
divide, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thanks.
There was a divide on the basis of age, whether people were for or against a constitutional amendment for redistricting. The younger people tended to be for it. The older people tended to be against it. Let me just tell you what happened at this one meeting that I went to.
You guys okay?
There were people in their 50s and 60s who basically said,
He's on the bill.
you know, when we make gains, and this was, for the most part, majority-minority group attendance. It said, when we make gains in the political process, like we were told to do, then they want to change, you know, the rules in the middle of the game. Some might view that as being cynical. I didn't. I think they had some concerns. But one of the things, and there was an attorney that spoke, is I remember when there was merit selection of judges, for example, we weren't getting selected. So then we came up with sub-circuits and all of those types of things, and through the political process. Now there are rumblings about going back to merit selection of judges. Similarly, people have, you know, taken over the years a lot of time and effort to be elected by their peers. And they would have been the ones to redraw these maps. Now you're seeing all of these competing amendments and ideas about mapping. And I've drawn a lot of maps in my life. I really could understand what some of these folks were saying. So if you were there at that meeting, what would you have told them regarding those concerns?
I really appreciate that question, Al, because this...
Members, can we please bring the noise level down in the chamber, take all conversations to the rear? We are finishing up this debate, and it's become increasingly difficult for members in the chamber to hear. Can we please bring the noise level down?
It's a great question.
Thank you.
I'm glad you brought it forward, because this constitutional amendment is designed to maximize those gains and to protect those gains. Where the system we have now, if legislators were drawing them, whoever might have that ability, they could take away those gains by artificially gerrymandering it to break up those communities of interest. This is by far the best protection for those gains and to maximize those gains, because the minority interests must be paramount, where nowhere else are they paramount.
But there are still districts that are under the Voting Rights Act, though, Jack.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Well, no, I'm just making a statement. You said that this gives a lot of protections, and I'm saying there's a lot of districts that are still under the Voting Rights Act that's supposed to give those protections too. Matter of fact, a lot of people are fighting to bring back, you know, the pre-clearance clause that was taken out. So how does this protect minority political gains and rights, you know, to elect people of their choice? How does this give them more protection than that would do?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Okay. Because the way this is drafted right now, the criteria for the districts, besides being substantially equal in population, these are prioritized in order of priority. After being equal in population, it provides racial minorities and language minorities with the equal opportunity to participate in the political process and elected candidates of their choice. So it is the most important issue after it being about equal size. We can't be any clearer. This is to protect and empower racial minorities, not to diminish.
Well, thank you for your explanation. I think, you know, there are people who have pause about that, and I can understand, you know, some of their concerns. As I said, there was that big age differential.
Yeah.
And, you know, some of the folks were around my age, you know, where we remember we were in high school when a lot of things like open, you know, the Fair Housing Act and the Voters' Rights Act were passed. And so clearly they would have some pause at something like this. But I just want to convey that to you and let you know what at least some people anecdotally were thinking that I met with.
I appreciate
Thank you.
that.
Representative Franks to close.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the debate. Ladies and gentlemen, let's do something for the people. Let's leave our cynicism outside of the chamber. Let's not hide behind people might be confused, and let's not insult the voters. We have an opportunity to fundamentally change how we draw our legislative maps and to finally empower the citizens of the state of Illinois. I understand we're asking you to give up a lot of your power, but the power we're giving up is only to help us, not to help the citizens. The power that we presently have is only done to protect incumbents. It's not about good government. This is about good government. This is about empowering the people to allow them to determine who is going to represent them instead of vice versa. Let's not play political games here. If you really believe that we need to fundamentally change how Illinois politics. Many of us who have been here for a while have seen the corruption that seeps throughout very many levels of our government. One of the reasons we have that is because of these districts that we draw. This may be one of the most important votes that we do for the future of our state. Let's vote yes for the future of Illinois.
Members, the question is, shall HJRCA 58 pass? All in favor, vote aye. All opposed, vote nay. The voting is open. Have all voted who wish? Have all voted who wish? Have all voted who wish? Mr. Clerk, please take the record. On the count of 105 voting yes, 7 voting no, 0 voting present, HJRCA 58 having received the requisite amount of votes is hereby declared pass.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.